When the human kissed the dying cub's brow, the Alphas dropped their spears. Part 1. The crash. The shuttle was falling. Una Park held tight to her seat as the small ship shook and screamed through the sky. Red lights flashed everywhere. Alarms rang so loud she could barely think. Outside the window, she saw fire and smoke trailing behind them like a burning tail. "Hold on!" shouted Taiho Kim from the pilot's seat. His hands moved fast over the controls, but nothing was working. The ship was dying, and they were going down. Una closed her eyes and thought about home. She thought about Earth, about the green trees and blue oceans she had left behind 5 years ago. She had become a diplomat for the Galactic Council, traveling to distant worlds to make peace between species. She was good at her job. She believed that any two beings could understand each other, if they just tried hard enough. But now she was going to die on a planet that should not exist on their flight path. The navigation computer had failed. It had pulled them out of hyperspace too early, right into the gravity of VEKKR-7.VEKKR-7. Even the name made her stomach cold with fear. She knew about this world. Everyone in the diplomatic corps knew about it. It was home to the Vrin, a species of giant wolf-like creatures who walked on 2 legs and stood over 8 feet tall. They had fur the color of storm clouds and eyes like golden fire. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. 3 expeditions had come to this world before. None had returned. The Vrin killed anyone who landed on their planet. They were classified as hostile, dangerous, and completely off-limits. No ships were supposed to come within 10 light years of this place, and now Una was crashing right into it. The ground came up fast. Taiho pulled hard on the controls, trying to slow their fall. Trees appeared below them, tall and purple, stretching up like reaching hands. The shuttle hit the first tree and spun. It hit another and flipped. Una felt her body thrown against the straps. She heard metal screaming, glass breaking, and then a terrible boom that shook her bones. Then everything went black. When Una opened her eyes, she was hanging upside down. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead. The shuttle was broken around her, torn open like a fruit that had been smashed on rocks. Smoke filled the air, thick and choking. She reached for her straps and pressed the release. She fell hard to what used to be the ceiling. Pain shot through her left arm, but she could move it. Nothing was broken. She was alive. "Taiho?" she called out. Her voice was weak and rough. "Taiho, can you hear me?" She crawled through the wreckage toward the front of the shuttle. Every movement hurt. Glass cut her hands. Smoke burned her lungs. But she kept going until she reached the pilot's seat. Taiho was still strapped in. His eyes were closed. His chest was not moving. Why? Una checked for a pulse. She checked again. And again. Nothing. She sat there for a long time, holding the hand of a man she had known for 3 years. Taiho had been a good pilot and a better friend. He had taught her card games during long flights. He had made her laugh when missions went wrong. He had promised to show her his hometown in Bizin when they returned to Earth. Now he would never go home. Una wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. But she knew she did not have time. The smoke was getting thicker. The shuttle might explode. And somewhere out there in the purple forest, the Vrin were waiting. She gathered what she could find. A small bag of emergency food. 2 bottles of water. A medical kit with bandages and pain medicine. A knife that seemed too small to matter. Her communication device was crushed. The emergency beacon was shattered into 100 pieces. No one knew where she was. No one was coming to save her. Una climbed out of the broken shuttle and stood on the alien ground. The soil was dark red, almost like dried blood. The trees around her were massive, with trunks as wide as houses and leaves that glowed faintly in the fading light. Strange sounds filled the air. Clicks and whistles and distant howls that made her skin prickle with fear. She looked back at the shuttle one last time. She could not bury Taiho. She did not have the tools or the time. But she found a piece of metal and used a knife to scratch his name into it. She placed it on his chest. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I will try to live. For both of us." Then she turned and walked into the forest. The first night was the hardest. Yuna found a space between two giant roots and curled up there, trying to stay warm. The temperature dropped fast when the sun went down. She had no fire, no shelter, nothing but her thin uniform. She shook so hard, her teeth clicked together. Sleep came in small pieces, broken by every sound. Once, she heard something big moving through the trees nearby. Heavy footsteps that made the ground shake. She held her breath and stayed perfectly still until the sound faded away. In the morning, she kept walking. She found a stream and followed it, hoping it would lead to open ground. She remembered from her training that rescue teams looked for survivors in clearings, places where shuttles could land. If she could find such a place, if she could build a signal fire, maybe someone would see. But she knew the truth. Her ship had crashed in forbidden space. No one would look for her here. No one would risk their lives on a planet full of monsters just to find one missing diplomat. She was alone. Truly alone. On the second day, Yuna started talking to herself. It helped to hear a voice, even if it was her own. She talked about her life, her family, her dreams. She talked about the aliens she had met during her travels, the friends she had made on a dozen different worlds. "I always believed we could connect with anyone," she said to the empty forest. "Human, alien, it does not matter. Everyone wants the same things: safety, belonging, love." The forest did not answer. On the third morning, Yuna heard something that changed everything. A sound that cut through the forest silence like a knife. High and thin and full of pain. Something was crying. She stopped walking. Every smart thought in her head told her to stay away. This was an alien world. Whatever was making that sound could be dangerous. Could be a trap. Could be the Vryn themselves waiting to kill her. But the sound came again. And this time, Yuna recognized it for what it was. It was the cry of a child. And Yuna Park, despite everything, could not walk away from a child in pain. She turned toward the sound and began to push through the undergrowth, not knowing that this choice would change the future of two species forever. When the human kissed the dying cub's brow, the alphas dropped their spears. Part 2. The Vryn far from where Yuna walked through the forest. In a village built of stone and bone, the Vryn were gathering for war. The village sat on a hill beside a great river that the Vryn called the Stone River. It was home to one of the largest packs on the planet, nearly 200 strong. Their houses were made from the bones of giant creatures they had hunted, held together with mud and plant fiber. Fires burned in stone pits, sending smoke up into the purple sky. The Vryn themselves were terrifying to look upon. They stood on two legs like humans, but that was where the similarity ended. Their bodies were covered in thick fur, gray and silver, and sometimes black as night. Their faces were like wolves, with long snouts full of sharp teeth and eyes that glowed golden in the dark. Their hands had 5 fingers, but each finger ended in a claw that could tear through flesh and bone with ease. They were hunters. They were warriors. They were the top of the food chain on Vector 7, and they knew it. At the center of the village stood a great stone platform. On this platform sat Raga, the alpha of the Stone River Pack. Raga was old for a Vryn, nearly 40 seasons. His fur had turned from dark gray to pale silver, and scars covered his body like a map of battles won. He was not the biggest Vryn in the pack, but he was the strongest in ways that mattered more than size. He was smart. He was fast. He was completely without mercy. Raga had led his pack for 15 seasons. In that time, he had doubled their territory. He had defeated 12 challengers who wanted to take his place. He had killed more enemies than anyone could count, and he had killed the outsiders from the stars. Raga remembered the first time the star people came. Strange creatures in metal shells, walking on two legs like Vryn, but soft and weak underneath. They had come in a great bird made of metal that fell from the sky. They had pointed sticks that shot fire and made loud sounds. The Vryn had watched from the forest. They had waited, and when the star people left their metal bird, the Vryn had attacked Dot. It had been easy. The star people were slow and clumsy. Their fire sticks were dangerous, but the Vryn were fast. They came from all sides at once, from the trees and the shadows. The star people screamed as they died. Raga had killed 2 of them himself. He remembered the strange red color of their blood. He remembered how they begged in words he could not understand. He remembered feeling nothing but satisfaction. These creatures had entered Vryn territory. They had paid the price. 3 times the star people had come. 3 times the Vryn had killed them all. The Galactic Council called the Vryn savage. They called them monsters. They said the Vryn could not be reasoned with, could not be civilized, could not be anything but dangerous animals. The Vryn did not know what the Galactic Council said about them. They did not care. They had their own laws, their own ways, their own understanding of the universe. The Vryn lived by a code called the Calveth. It was older than memory, passed down from mother to cub for 1,000 generations. The Calveth was simple. Strength is survival. Weakness is death. This law shaped everything in Vryn society. The strongest led. The weakest followed or died. Cubs were not cuddled or protected. They were tested from the day they were born. If a cub was sick, it was left to die. If a cub was weak, it was abandoned. Only the strong deserved to survive. There was no word for love in the Vryn language. There was no word for mercy or kindness or compassion. These ideas did not exist for them. They were soft ideas, weak ideas, ideas that would make a pack vulnerable to enemies. The Vryn had many words for strength. They had words for different kinds of strength. The strength of claws, the strength of teeth, the strength of will, the strength of a hunter who does not stop until prey is caught. But they had no word for the strength of a gentle touch, no word for the power of care. These things were invisible to them, like colors they could not see. Now, scouts had brought news to Raga. Another metal bird had fallen from the sky. It had crashed in the forest 2 days' walk from the village. Something was moving out there. Something alive. Raga stood on his platform and addressed his hunters. 20 of the strongest warriors in the pack, each one carrying a spear with a blade of black obsidian. Each one wearing the bones of enemies they had killed. Another outsider walks our land, Raga said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. The Calveth is clear. We find, we kill. The stars must learn that Vector 7 belongs to the Vryn. The hunters howled their agreement, a sound that echoed across the village and into the forest beyond Dot, but one Vryn did not howl. Her name was Suri, and she was Raga's daughter. She was young, only 12 seasons, but she had already proven herself as a hunter. She was faster than most males and smarter than nearly everyone. Suri had questions that other Vryn never asked. She wondered why the star people kept coming. She wondered what was out there, beyond the sky, beyond the stars. She wondered if there were better ways to live than the endless cycle of hunting and fighting and killing. She never spoke these questions aloud. To question the Calveth was dangerous. Even the daughter of the Alpha could be cast out for such weakness. But when she heard about the crashed metal bird, she felt something strange in her chest. Not fear, not hunger for the hunt. Something else. something that had no name in her language. Curiosity. What were these star people really like? Why did they keep coming to a world that killed them? What did they want? Suri joined the hunting party. She told herself it was to prove her strength, to show the pack that she was a worthy heir to her father. But deep inside, in a place she did not understand, she hoped for something more. She hoped to see one of these star people alive, to look into their strange flat faces and see what kind of creature they really were. The hunting party moved into the forest as the sun began to set. 20 Vryn warriors, silent as shadows, deadly as the night itself. They followed the scent of smoke and metal and something else. Something strange and new. The scent of a human. Miles away, unaware that death was coming for her, Unipark pushed through the undergrowth toward the sound of a crying child. 2 paths were about to cross. 2 worlds were about to meet. And in that meeting, everything would change. But first, there would be a test. A moment that would prove whether humans were truly different from all the other creatures of the galaxy. A moment that would show what humans were really made of. Not weapons. Not technology. Not the power to destroy. Something much more powerful than any of those things. Something the Vryn had never seen before. When the human kissed the dying cub's brow, the alphas dropped their spears. Part 3. The dying cub Yuna pushed through the thick plants, following the sound of crying. Branches scratched her face. Thorns caught her uniform and tore small holes in the fabric. But she kept moving forward, her heart beating fast in her chest. The crying grew louder. It was a sad sound, full of pain and fear. It reminded Yuna of the puppies she had seen at a shelter back on Earth, the ones that had been abandoned and left alone. She came around a large tree and stopped. Before her was a small clearing in the forest. Sunlight came down through the leaves in golden beams. And there, in the middle of the clearing, lay a small creature. It was a Vryn cub. Yuna had seen pictures of adult Vryn in the military reports. Those pictures showed huge monsters with teeth and claws, covered in the blood of their victims. This was nothing like those pictures. The cub was small, no bigger than a large dog. Its fur was silver gray and soft-looking. Its eyes were closed, but she could see they were shaped like the eyes of a young puppy. It had a small snout and tiny ears that lay flat against its head. It was, despite everything she knew about the Vryn, beautiful. But it was also dying. Yuna could see that right away. The cub's back leg was bent at a wrong angle, clearly broken. Blood had dried in its fur. Its breathing was fast and shallow, and even from where she stood, she could see that its body was shaking. Foam had gathered at the corners of its mouth. Fever, she thought. Infection. Without help, this little one would be dead by morning. Her mind told her to walk away. This was a Vryn. Its family had killed humans. If she tried to help it, the adults might find her. She would die for nothing. But her heart would not let her leave. Yuna had spent her whole life believing that compassion mattered. She had become a diplomat because she believed that kindness could cross any barrier. She had argued with generals and politicians who said that some species were too dangerous to talk to. She had always believed that everyone, everywhere, deserved a chance. Could she really walk away from a dying child? No, she could not. Slowly, carefully, Yuna walked toward the cub. It must have heard her coming, because its eyes opened. They were golden, just like the report said, but clouded with pain and fear. The cub tried to growl, but the sound came out weak and broken. Yuna said softly. She held up her empty hands so the cub could see she had no weapons. I am not going to hurt you. I want to help. The cub did not understand her words, but perhaps it understood her tone. Or perhaps it was simply too weak to fight. It watched her with those golden eyes as she came closer and knelt beside it. Up close, the smell was bad. The wound had become infected. The leg was swollen and hot to the touch. Yuna opened her medical kit and looked at what she had. Human medicine. Would it work on a Vrin? She did not know. But she had to try something. She cleaned the wound as gently as she could. The cub whimpered and tried to pull away, but it was too weak. She talked to it the whole time, keeping her voice soft and calm. I know it hurts. I am sorry. I am trying to help. Just a little more. You are being so brave. She found 2 straight branches and tore strips from her uniform. She used these to make a splint for the broken leg, wrapping it tight but not too tight. It was not perfect, but it would have to do. The cub watched everything she did. It stopped trying to growl. Somewhere in its young mind, something was changing. This strange creature with no fur and no claws was touching it gently, helping it. No one had ever done that before. Yuna dripped water into the cub's mouth. At first it choked and coughed, but then it started to drink. She gave it small pieces of her emergency food, and even though the taste was strange, the cub ate that. As the sun went down, the temperature dropped. The cub started to shake harder. Its fever was getting worse. Yuna had nothing to fight infection, no antibiotics that would work on alien biology. All she could do was try to keep the little one warm. She took off her jacket and wrapped it around the cub. Then she lay down next to it, pressing her body close to share her heat. The cub was stiff at first, afraid, but slowly it relaxed. Its breathing became a little easier. There you go, Yuna whispered. You are not alone anymore. I am here. She stroked the fur between the cub's ears. It was soft, softer than she expected. The cub made a small sound, not a growl but something else. Something almost like a purr. The night was long and hard. The cub's fever rose and fell. Sometimes it would shake so hard that Yuna thought she was losing it. She held it close and talked to it through the darkness. She told it about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the cities full of lights and the villages full of laughter. She told it about her mother, who had died when she was young, and her father, who had raised her alone. She told it about her dream of bringing peace to the galaxy. I do not know if you can understand me, she said, but I want you to know that you matter. Your life matters. Someone cares whether you live or die. Just before dawn, the fever reached its peak. The cub's breathing became so shallow that Yuna could barely see its chest move. Its little body was burning hot, and its eyes were rolled back in its head. Yuna held it close and felt tears running down her face. She had tried so hard. She had given everything she had. But it was not enough. Please, she whispered. Please do not go. Please, fight. You are strong. I know you are strong. She looked down at the small face, so peaceful now, so close to death. And without thinking, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to the cub's forehead. It was a kiss. The kind of kiss a mother gives a sick child. The kind that says, I love you. I am here. Everything will be okay. Among humans, this gesture was common, natural. Everyone understood what it meant. Among the Vrin, such a thing had never been seen, never been imagined, never even been dreamed of. Yuna held her lips against the cub's burning forehead and whispered the words that humans have always whispered to those they love. I am here. I will not leave you. You are loved. And something impossible happened. The cub's breathing steadied. Its fever began to drop. Its small body stopped shaking and grew calm. It was as if her kiss, her words, her love had reached something deep inside the cub and given it a reason to keep fighting. By morning, the cub was still alive. Its fever had broken. Its eyes opened, clear and golden, and looked up at Yuna with something like wonder. Yuna laughed and cried at the same time. She hugged the cub gently, careful of its broken leg. "You made it," she said. "You strong little thing. You made it." The cub licked her face. Its tongue was rough, like a cat's, but the gesture was unmistakably affectionate. This creature that should have been her enemy, this child of a species that killed humans, was showing her love. Yuna did not know that 20 Vryn hunters were already following her trail. She did not know that death was coming for her, carried on silent feet through the purple forest. All she knew was that she had saved a life. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. She picked up the cub gently and held it in her arms. It was heavy, but she did not care. She would carry it as far as she needed to. "Come on," she said. "Let us find somewhere safe." She started walking, not knowing that she was walking toward the moment that would change everything. When the human kissed the dying cub's brow, the alphas dropped their spears. Part 4. The alphas arrive. The sun was just starting to rise when Raga found the human. He had been tracking her scent for 2 days. It was a strange smell, this human scent. Salt and something sweet, like the flowers that bloomed after rain. Nothing like the metal and fire smell of the star people who had come before in their armor and machines. The hunters moved through the forest like ghosts. 20 of the finest warriors in the Stone River Pack, each one trained since birth to kill. They made no sound. They left no trace. They were deaf, moving through the trees. Raga led them to the edge of a small clearing. He held up his hand, and the hunters stopped. Through the leaves, he could see the human, and what he saw made him freeze. The human was small. So small. Raga had fought humans before, big ones in hard shells that fired weapons. This one had no shell, no weapons. She was thin and dirty, with strange dark fur only on the top of her head. Her skin was brown like wood, and there were cuts and bruises all over her body. She looked weak. She looked like prey, but that was not what made Raga freeze. What made him freeze was what she was holding in her arms. Wrapped in torn pieces of her strange covering was a Vryn cub. Raga recognized it immediately. That silver-gray fur. Those small ears. The leg wrapped in a rough splint. It was Kale, his own grandcub. Kale had been born weak. From his first breath, everyone knew he would not survive. He was smaller than the other cubs. He got sick easily. When he fell and broke his leg 3 days ago, the pack had done what the Calveth demanded. They had carried him to the forest and left him there. It was the way. It had always been the way. The weak must die so the strong can live. There was no room for soft feelings, no space for useless mouths. Kale would have grown up to be a burden on the pack. It was better that he die young. Raga had not even watched them take the cub away. He had felt nothing. Why would he feel anything? It was just the Calveth, but now here was Kale, alive, his leg bound in a splint, his fur clean, his eyes bright and alert. And holding him was a human, a creature from a species that the Vryn had killed 3 times over. The human had not hurt the cub. She had helped him. She had saved him. Why? This question burned in Raga's mind like fire. Why would a human save a Vryn cub? There was nothing to gain. Kale could not help her escape. He could not fight for her. He was just a weak little thing that would slow her down. It made no sense. The Calveth could not explain it. Nothing Raga knew could explain it. He watched as the human adjusted the cub in her arms, careful not to bump the broken leg. He saw how gently she held him. He saw the cub lick her face, and he saw her smile. She was smiling. This creature, lost and alone on a world that wanted her dead, surrounded by dangers she could not even imagine, was smiling because a cub had licked her face. What kind of being does such a thing? Beside him, the hunters were growing restless. They gripped their spears tight. They were ready to kill. One word from Raga, and they would rush forward and end the human in seconds. Raga raised his hand to give the signal, but before he could move, the human saw them. Her eyes went wide. Her body went stiff. Raga could smell her fear explode into the air, sharp and bright. She knew what they were. She knew what they could do. She should have run. Any sensible creature would have run. Or dropped the cub and begged for mercy. Or tried to use the cub as a bargaining chip. The human did none of these things. Instead, she pulled Kale closer to her chest. She wrapped her thin arms around him and turned her back to the hunters, shielding the cub with her own body. She was protecting him. This soft, weak, clawless creature was trying to protect a Vryn cub from 20 Vryn warriors. It was the most foolish thing Raga had ever seen. It was also the bravest. The hunters burst from the trees, surrounding the human in seconds. 20 spears pointed at her from all directions. There was no escape, no hope. She was going to die, but she did not beg. She did not scream. She looked up at Raga, who had stepped forward to stand directly in front of her, and she met his eyes. Among the Vryn, meeting an alpha's eyes was a challenge. It was a way of saying, I am not afraid of you. I will fight you. It was something that could get you killed, but this human's gaze was different. There was no challenge in it, no threat, just a quiet, desperate determination. I will not let you hurt him, she said. Her voice was shaking, but her words were clear. I do not care what your laws say. He deserved to live. Every child deserves someone who will fight for them. Raga did not understand her words. The Vryn had never learned human language, but he understood something in her voice, something that went beyond words. She meant what she was saying. She would die before she let them take the cub. Raga looked down at her. This tiny thing, this soft, fragile creature, who stood against 20 hunters with nothing but her body and her will. He remembered the humans he had killed before. They had fought hard. They had screamed and clawed and tried to survive. But when they knew they were going to die, he had seen the hope leave their eyes. He had seen them give up. This human had no hope. She was going to die, and she knew it. But she was not giving up. She was not letting go. She held the cub tight and waited for the end. And in her eyes there was something Raga had never seen before. It was not the strength of claws. It was not the strength of teeth. It was not the strength of weapons or armor or numbers. It was something else. Something that had no name in his language. Raga thought about the Calveth. Strength is survival. Weakness is death. He had lived by this law his entire life. He had never questioned it. But now, looking at this human, he felt the law crumble inside him like old stone. The Calveth said she was weak. She had no claws, no fangs, no muscles. She could not hunt. She could not fight. By every measure of the Vryn, she was worthless. But she had found a dying cub and given it life. She had walked through a forest full of danger to save a creature that was not her own blood. She stood now against impossible odds, not for herself, but for a child she had known for only 2 days. That was not weakness. That was the greatest strength Raga had ever seen. He lowered himself to one knee behind him. The hunters gasped. An alpha kneeling? To pray? It was unthinkable. It was impossible. It went against everything the Vryn believed. But Raga did not care. Something was changing inside him. Something old and hard was breaking apart. Why? He asked. The word came out rough and broken. One of the few human words the Vryn had learned from listening to star people before they died. Why save enemy cub? Why die for not blood? The human looked at him. Tears were running down her face, but she was not crying from fear. She was crying from something else. Because that is what love is, she said. You do not choose who deserves it. You just give it. Raga did not know the word love. But watching her, holding the cub, ready to die for a stranger. He began to understand what it meant. He reached out his hand. The hunters tensed, ready to see him crush the human skull. But instead, he touched her face gently, the way he had never touched anyone before. "You teach us," he said. "You teach us this word, love." Behind him, one by one, the hunters lowered their spears. The hunt was over. Something new was about to begin. When the human kissed the dying cub's brow, the alphas dropped their spears apart. 5. A new dawn. The rescue shuttle came 11 days later. Yuna had been living in the Stone River village, sleeping in a house made of bones, eating strange purple fruits that tasted like honey and pepper. The Vryn had accepted her in a way that no one in the galaxy would have believed possible. At first, it had been awkward. The Vryn did not know how to treat a guest. They had never had one before. They tried to give her raw meat, which she could not eat. They tried to teach her to howl, which made strange squeaking sounds come from her throat. They watched her with golden eyes full of curiosity, like children seeing something new. But slowly, things got better. Suri, the young daughter of Radha, became something like a friend. She followed Yuna everywhere, asking questions in broken human words that she was learning fast. Why do humans cover their bodies? Why do humans cook food? Why do humans cry when they are happy? Yuna answered every question as best she could, and she asked her own questions in return. She learned about the Kalveth, the law that had ruled the Vryn for 1,000 generations. She learned about their history, their hunts, their struggles to survive on a harsh world. And she taught them about love. It was not easy. The Vryn had no word for love. They had no way to even think about it. But Yuna showed them what it meant through her actions. She showed them when she held Kale, the cub she had saved, and sang soft songs to help him sleep. She showed them when she helped an old Vryn with an injured paw, even though he had growled at her. She showed them when she sat with young cubs and told them stories about faraway stars. Love, she explained, is not about strength. It is not about what you can get. It is about caring for others even when it costs you something. It is about seeing someone in pain and wanting to help, even if they are a stranger, even if they are an enemy. The Vryn listened. They watched. And slowly, something began to change in them. On the 7th day, a young mother brought her sick cub to Yuna instead of leaving it in the forest to die. On the 8th day, 2 hunters who had been rivals for years sat down and shared a meal together. On the 9th day, Raga himself carried water to an elder who was too weak to walk to the river. Small things. Simple things. But to the Vryn, they were revolutionary. When the rescue shuttle appeared in the sky, Yuna was in the center of the village, teaching a group of cubs how to play a clapping game from Earth. She looked up at the sound of engines and felt her heart lift. She was going home, but she also felt something else. A sadness. A sense that she was leaving something important behind. The shuttle landed in a clearing outside the village. A woman climbed out, her face pale with fear. She was expecting to find a corpse. What she found instead made her freeze in shock. Yuna stood surrounded by Vryn. Dozens of them. The creatures that had killed 3 expeditions were standing peacefully around a human woman. And on her shoulders sat a small cub with a splinted leg. "This is Kale," Yuna said, her voice calm despite her exhaustion. "And this is Raga, Alpha of the Stone River Pack. He would like to discuss opening relations with humanity." The pilot stared. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Raga stepped forward, and the pilot stumbled backward in terror. But the Alpha did not attack. He stood tall and proud, and when he spoke, his voice was strong. "Before, humans come with weapons, come with fear. We see enemies, we kill enemies. Is Kalveth. His way." He paused, looking down at Yuna with warmth in his golden eyes. This human come with nothing. No weapons. No army. Just love. She save cub, we leave to die. She show us weakness can be strength. Kindness can be power. He turned back to the pilot. Vryn learned wrong lesson from stars. We think soft things are prey. We think only claw and fang make strong. He placed a hand over his chest. Human teach us heart makes strong too. Strongest thing Raga ever see is tiny human stand against 20 hunters to protect child not her own. The pilot was crying. She did not know why. Perhaps because she was seeing something that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. A bridge being built between two worlds that everyone said could never be connected. The Calveth is changing, Raga continued. New law now. Strength protects the weak. We call it the Unipath. The Unipath. Una felt tears spill down her own cheeks when she heard the words. A law named after her. A philosophy that would change an entire species. All because she could not walk away from a dying child. The shuttle took Una back to civilization, but she returned to Vector 7 many times in the years that followed. She became the official ambassador to the Vryn, the only human they would trust. She watched as the Stone River Pack grew stronger under the new ways. She watched as other packs came to learn the Una path. She watched as a species that had been called savage and unreachable became something beautiful. The Vryn joined Galactic Council not as warriors, but as protectors. Their new code spread from pack to pack until it became the heart of their society. Where once they had abandoned the weak, now they sheltered them. Where once they had killed strangers, now they offered welcome. 50 years passed. Una grew old, her dark hair turning white, her body becoming frail. But her eyes kept their warmth, and her smile never faded. She had grandchildren of her own now, and she told them stories. About the Vryn, about a little cub named Kale who had grown into a strong alpha, about a fierce warrior named Raga who had learned that love was not weakness. When Una died at 93 years old, 17 Vryn alphas traveled across the galaxy to attend her funeral. Raga was there, ancient now but still proud, his silver fur white as snow. He stood before the gathering and spoke the eulogy. Humans ask what makes them special, he said. Other species are stronger. Other species are faster. Other species are smarter. But no species in all the stars loves like humans love. His voice cracked with emotion, an emotion his people had not known they could feel before one small human taught them. They love enemies. They love strangers. They love the dying, the broken, the abandoned. They love when there is no reason. They love when it costs them everything. He looked at the sky, where 100 human ships had gathered to honor their fallen hero. Vryn were blind. Humans opened our eyes. Now we see that love is the greatest strength in the universe. He raised his head and howled. It was a sound of grief and gratitude, of loss and hope, of a bond that would never break. Across the planet, millions of Vryn voices joined him, and somewhere, in whatever place souls go when bodies fail, Una Park smiled. She had always believed that compassion could cross any divide. That kindness was stronger than hate. That love could reach even the hardest hearts. She had been right. On the Vryn homeworld, a statue was built in her honor. It showed a human woman pressing her lips to the brow of a small cub. Beneath it, carved in 100 languages, were words that would be remembered for 1,000 generations. Love does not ask if you deserve it. Love simply gives. And far across the galaxy, wherever beings gathered to tell stories of the strange creatures called humans, they told the tale of a woman who crashed on a hostile world, found a dying cub, and kissed its brow. They told of how the alphas dropped their spears, and they wondered, in quiet voices, what it would be like to love like that. to give without asking, to protect without counting the cost. To be, even for a moment, a little bit human. The end.